1991 was a strange year for horror. The genre was caught between decades, unsure if it belonged in theaters or on video store shelves. The slasher boom had died, the self-aware era hadn't started yet, and what emerged was something weirder. A collection of ambitious misfits that tried everything from demon priests to highway trips through hell. This was the year Full Moon Entertainment hit its stride with actual European castles and vengeful puppets. Stephen King adaptations filled TV movie slots. Lucio Fulci was still crafting gothic mysteries, while Hollywood was pivoting towards psychological thrillers. Some of these films found audiences, others vanished immediately, but all of them capture a moment when horror was experimenting, searching for what came next. Tonight we're looking at 10 overlooked films from 1991, vampire epics shot in Romania, possessed dolls in Mexican factories, killer cats in suburban homes, and creatures that defy easy description. A snapshot of horror in transition, when anything still felt possible and nobody knew which direction would win. Subspecies 1991. Full Moon Entertainment took their monster-making operation to Romania and discovered something magical: actual Gothic castles, ancient graveyards, and locations that looked genuinely medieval without set dressing. Subspecies follows three American students studying folklore in Transylvania who encounter Radu, an ancient vampire with elongated fingers and a face that nightmares are made of. His conflict with his more noble vampire brother over a bloodstone that drips the blood of saints becomes secondary to Radu's obsession with claiming one of the students for himself. Anders Hove plays Radu with theatrical menace and physical grotesqueness. The makeup and prosthetic fingers create a truly monstrous vampire that rejects any romantic interpretation. He's all predatory hunger and sadistic glee, a creature that feels genuinely ancient and evil. The titular subspecies are tiny demonic minions that birth from Radu's own fingers, stop-motion creations by David Allen that add surreal horror to the proceedings. Director Ted Nicolau uses the Romanian locations brilliantly, shooting in actual castles and cobblestone villages that give the film atmosphere beyond its modest budget. The cinematography captures genuine Gothic beauty. Moonlit castle towers, fog-shrouded forests, and crumbling crypts that don't need enhancement. Combined with practical creature effects and committed performances, Subspecies feels more authentic than many bigger-budget vampire films. The film spawned multiple sequels that continued Radu's story, building a surprisingly coherent mythology across Full Moon's catalog. It represents Charles Band's production company at a creative peak, when shooting overseas allowed them to deliver atmosphere and spectacle that elevated their creature feature formula into something genuinely atmospheric. Voices from Beyond, 1991. Lucio Fulci's Voices from Beyond finds the Italian horror maestro in more restrained mode, crafting a supernatural mystery about a wealthy patriarch who dies under suspicious circumstances. From beyond death, his spirit reaches out to his daughter through visions and whispers, guiding her investigation into his demise. As she digs deeper, she uncovers family secrets, corporate conspiracy, and evidence suggesting everyone close to him had motive for patricide. Duilio del Prete plays the deceased father in extended flashback sequences that reveal his cruel manipulation of family members, making him simultaneously victim and villain. Karina Huff portrays the daughter torn between grief and growing suspicion, navigating a web of lies from relatives who each harbor secrets. The investigation structure gives the film procedural backbone, while supernatural elements add Gothic atmosphere. Fulci tones down his typical extreme gore in favor of psychological horror and mystery plotting, though his fascination with death and decay still manifests in morgue sequences and decomposition imagery. The film's visual approach emphasizes shadows, distorted perspectives, and unsettling framing that creates pervasive unease without relying on explicit violence. The supernatural communication between father and daughter provides the film's most effective moments, his ghostly guidance leading her toward truth while protecting her from those who'd silence her. The climax delivers both mystery resolution and supernatural payoff, revealing the extent of the conspiracy while allowing the spirit's vengeance. Voices from Beyond represents Fulci working in more accessible register, proving he could craft suspenseful mystery thrillers without abandoning his gothic sensibilities. It's a minor work in his filmography, but demonstrates range beyond the extreme horror that made him infamous. Strays, 1991. Suburban nightmare arrives on four legs in this made-for-TV creature feature about a family who moves into their dream home, unaware that a colony of feral cats has claimed the house as their territory. What begins as minor nuisances, scratching, hissing, dead animals, escalates into coordinated attacks as the cats defend their domain with intelligence and vicious determination. Kathleen Quinlan and Timothy Busfield play the parents realizing too late that they've invaded something's established hunting ground. The film treats the cats not as supernatural threats, but as territorial predators operating with pack mentality, which makes their behavior feel grounded even as it becomes increasingly extreme. Director John McPherson stages the cat attacks with surprising effectiveness, using quick cuts and practical effects to suggest violence that TV standards wouldn't allow showing directly. The feline cast, actual trained cats supplemented by animatronics for more aggressive sequences, creates genuine menace through numbers and coordination. Watching dozens of cats mass outside windows or infiltrate the house through hidden passages taps into primal unease about nature invading domestic spaces. The film understands that cats' natural hunting behavior, amplified and coordinated, becomes genuinely threatening. The script by Sean Cassidy explores family dynamics and suburban isolation alongside creature feature thrills. The family's attempts to convince authorities about the threat mirror classic horror tropes about not being believed, while their growing paranoia and desperation feel earned rather than manufactured. Strays represents TV horror that maximizes its premise despite limitations, creating effective creature feature tension from ordinary animals behaving extraordinarily. It's nature strikes back horror that works because it commits to treating cats as serious threats rather than camp. The Borrower, 1991. John McNaughton followed up Portrait of a Serial Killer with something completely different, a sci-fi horror comedy about an alien criminal whose punishment involves being transformed into human form and exiled to Earth. Problem is, the transformation is unstable. His head keeps exploding, forcing him to steal replacement heads from victims to survive. A detective investigates the bizarre string of headless bodies, while the alien borrower stumbles through human society, accumulating heads like outfits. The premise is gloriously absurd, and McNaughton plays it with deadpan seriousness that makes the dark comedy land. Ray Don Chong stars as the detective trying to make sense of forensic evidence that defies logic, while the alien, played by various actors as he switches heads, lurches through encounters that highlight the absurdity of human behavior through extraterrestrial eyes. The practical head explosion effects are spectacularly messy, each transformation delivering splatter-heavy gore that's both shocking and darkly funny. The film's tone walks a tightrope between genuine horror and satirical comedy, using the body-swapping premise to comment on identity, criminality, and social dysfunction. The borrower's attempts to blend into society while literally falling apart create scenarios that are simultaneously disturbing and hilarious. Shot with more style and craft than typical early 90s creature features, The Borrower benefits from McNaughton's directorial skill and willingness to embrace the premise's inherent weirdness. It's the kind of high-concept B-movie that could only exist in the early 90s direct-to-video market. Too strange for mainstream audiences, but perfect for genre fans seeking something genuinely odd. Dolly, Dearest, 1991. An American family moves to Mexico to revive a failing doll factory, unaware that the property sits atop ancient ruins where a demonic spirit has been imprisoned for centuries. When the spirit possesses the factory's inventory of porcelain dolls, the family's young daughter receives one as a gift. And Dolly has plans that involve much more than playtime. As the possessed dolls multiply and their violence escalates, the family must discover the spirit's origins and find a way to stop it. The film arrived in Child's Play's wake, clearly capitalizing on Evil Doll's success. But director Maria Elise brings enough craft to make it more than a simple cash grab. The Mexican locations provide authentic atmosphere, ancient ruins, dusty factories, and colonial architecture that grounds the supernatural premise. The doll effects blend animatronics and puppetry with varying success, most effective when the dolls move in quick, unsettling bursts rather than extended sequences. Denise Crosby leads the cast as the mother slowly realizing her daughter's beloved toy is something malevolent, while Sam Bottoms plays the father, whose business venture becomes a nightmare. Rip Torn appears as the archaeologist who understands the demonic forces at play, adding veteran presence. The child performance captures genuine creepiness as the daughter falls under Dolly's influence. The film's mythology connecting dolls to ancient demon worship provides more depth than expected, treating the supernatural elements with surprising seriousness. The climax delivers practical effects chaos as multiple possessed dolls attack simultaneously. Dolly Dearest won't replace Chucky in the evil doll pantheon, but it's competently made horror that found its audience through video stores seeking child's play alternatives. Highway to Hell, 1991. Charlie Sykes is driving through the Nevada desert with his girlfriend when they're stopped at a police checkpoint, but the cop is actually a demonic hell cop who kidnaps her to hell, where she's destined to become Satan's bride. Charlie follows through a literal highway to the Underworld, a desert landscape populated by the damned, bizarre creatures and twisted reflections of earthly institutions. He has limited time to rescue her before the wedding ceremony damns her eternally. Chad Lowe plays Charlie with earnest determination that grounds the increasingly surreal journey, while Christy Swanson provides the imperiled girlfriend who's more capable than typical damsel roles. C.J. Graham brings menacing presence as the Hell Cop, a demonic antagonist who pursues them through the underworld. Ben Stiller appears in a supporting role as a short-order cook in Hell's version of a diner. Director Ate de Jong creates a unique vision of Hell as twisted Americana. Diners serving beetles, gas stations run by monsters, and vast desert highways where the damned are condemned to eternal road trips. The production design transforms familiar roadside locations into something nightmarish through practical creature effects and warped architecture. The film's dark humor balances genuine horror. This hell is both absurd and genuinely threatening. The practical creature effects populate hell with demons, monsters, and grotesque inhabitants that give the underworld texture and variety. Each location offers new bizarre encounters as Charlie navigates toward his goal, creating episodic structure that keeps the journey unpredictable. Highway to Hell represents high-concept horror comedy that commits fully to its premise, delivering imaginative world-building and practical effects on a modest budget. It's road trip movie meets rescue mission meets Dante's Inferno, filtered through early 90s genre sensibilities. Puppet Master 3, Toulon's Revenge, 1991. Full Moon's Puppet Master series found its creative peak in the third entry by doing something unexpected, making the puppets the heroes. Set in 1941, Berlin, the film reveals André Toulon's origins, showing how his living puppets became weapons against the Nazis who threatened him and his wife. When the Third Reich discovers his animation secrets and wants them for their own purposes, Toulon's creations become instruments of revenge against fascist officers. Guy Rolfe takes over the Toulon role and makes it his own, playing the puppeteer with quiet dignity and barely contained rage. The period setting allows the film to explore Toulon's motivations while positioning the puppets as anti-Nazi resistance fighters, which gives the violence moral weight it lacked in previous entries. Watching tiny assassins take down SS officers becomes genuinely satisfying. The puppet designs by David Allen remain impressive. Blade with his knife hands, Tunneler with his drill head, Pinhead with his superhuman strength, and newcomer six-shooter with revolvers built into his body. Each gets memorable action sequences showcasing their unique abilities. The stop-motion and puppetry blend seamlessly, giving the creatures personality and menace. Director David Decoteau handles the period setting convincingly, despite obvious budget constraints, using German locations and careful production design to sell 1940s Berlin. The film balances horror, action, and surprising emotional depth as Toulon's personal tragedy fuels his war against the Third Reich. Puppet Master 3 proved that direct-to-video horror could improve upon its predecessors through smart storytelling choices. By making Toulon sympathetic and his enemies genuinely despicable, the film transforms killer puppet premise into something with actual stakes and emotional investment. Sometimes They Come Back, 1991. Tom McNaughton adapts Stephen King's short story for television. Following a high school teacher returning to his hometown decades after witnessing his brother's death at the hands of teenage thugs. When the greasers who killed his brother, who died in a car crash fleeing the scene, begin reappearing as his students, unchanged by time and radiating malevolence, he realizes something supernatural has given them a chance to finish what they started. Tim Matheson anchors the film with genuine emotional weight, playing trauma and mounting terror as the past literally returns. The greasers, led by Robert Rusler, embrace anachronistic 1950s rebel aesthetics while behaving with supernatural menace. They're both teenage archetypes and demonic revenants, shifting between human and something darker. The film explores grief, guilt, and the impossibility of escaping formative trauma. McNaughton works within television restrictions, but creates genuine atmosphere through lighting and sound design, rather than explicit violence. The supernatural manifestations escalate gradually. Flickering lights, impossible appearances, reality bending around the greaser's presence. The climax involves occult ritual and demonic confrontation that pushes against TV movie boundaries, while maintaining broadcast standards. The film benefits from King's character-driven source material, prioritizing psychological horror over spectacle. It's about a man forced to relive his worst moment and find the courage he lacked as a child. The supporting cast, including Brooke Adams as the supportive wife, grounds the supernatural elements in human relationships. Sometimes They Come Back became one of the more successful King TV adaptations, spawning sequels and finding enduring life through cable replays. It represents early 90s television horror that respected source material while delivering accessible supernatural thrills. Happy Hell Night, 1991. 25 years ago, a priest possessed by demonic forces went on a rampage through a fraternity house before being confined to an asylum. Now, as part of a Hell Night hazing ritual, fraternity pledges break into the institution and accidentally release him. Father Malleus returns to finish what he started, hunting the descendants of those who imprisoned him, while wielding supernatural powers and a talent for creative violence. Darren McGavin plays the obsessed priest who spent decades tracking Malleus, bringing gravitas to what could have been a forgettable slasher. The film blends supernatural horror with slasher conventions. Malleus isn't just a killer, but a demonic force that can manipulate reality, possess victims, and withstand damage that would stop human antagonists. This gives the kills variety beyond typical stalk and slash sequences. The college setting provides the requisite young cast for mayhem, but the film's stronger when focusing on McGavin's pursuit and Malleus's supernatural abilities. The practical effects range from ambitious to budget-constrained, but there's genuine craft in the demon sequences and transformation effects. The fraternity house location becomes a maze of potential death traps as Malleus toys with his victims. Happy Hell Night arrived during slasher cinema's decline, when the formula had been exhausted and audiences had moved on. It attempts to revitalize the genre through supernatural elements and gothic atmosphere, with mixed success. The film represents early 90s horror, trying to find new angles on familiar formulas, not quite succeeding commercially, but delivering enough practical effects and creative kills to satisfy the rental market that sustained these productions. Scissors, 1991. Frank De Felida's psychological thriller casts Sharon Stone as a traumatized woman whose repressed memories and crippling fear of men make her vulnerable when she becomes entangled with a mysterious stranger. After a violent attack, she finds herself trapped in an apartment where reality becomes increasingly unstable. The film blurs the line between psychological breakdown and genuine conspiracy. Stone delivers a raw, vulnerable performance that predates her basic instinct stardom, playing a woman whose mental state makes her an unreliable narrator. Steve Railsback brings unsettling intensity as the stranger whose intentions remain ambiguous, while Ronnie Cox appears as the therapist trying to help her distinguish reality from delusion. The film keeps audiences off balance about what's real and what's psychological manifestation. DeFilippo, working from his own script, constructs a claustrophobic nightmare that traps both character and audience in confined spaces where trust evaporates. The apartment becomes a prison where every sound suggests threat, and every shadow could hide an attacker. The film's depiction of trauma and its aftermath feels surprisingly serious for early 90s thriller territory. The mystery structure keeps revealing new layers. Each explanation creates more questions, and the film withholds definitive answers until the climax forces revelation. The confined setting and small cast create intimacy that makes the psychological horror more immediate and personal. Scissors arrived during the early 90s psychological thriller boom, but got lost among bigger releases. It represents a specific strain of paranoia cinema that explores female trauma and mental instability with more complexity than typical exploitation, though it never quite escapes thriller genre conventions. 1991 didn't produce any genre-defining classics, but it gave us something arguably more interesting, a collection of weird experiments that show horror refusing to settle into formula. From Romanian castles to Nevada highways to hell itself, these films prove that imagination could still compensate for modest budgets and uncertain distribution. Some of these found cult audiences through video stores and cable replays. Others remain genuinely obscure, waiting to be rediscovered. But they all represent filmmakers still willing to take risks, still trying new approaches, still believing that practical effects and committed performances could sell the strangest premises. If you love the transitional moments in horror history where the genre was figuring itself out, hit that like button, subscribe, and let us know which 1991 obscurity deserves more attention. Thanks for watching, and remember, always be kind and rewind, because every movie is someone's favorite.